everyone. My name is Amira Armond. I'm the president of Kieri Solutions. We have Jill Wright, marketing expert extraordinaire. No, animation expert and extraordinaire. Chat GPT, AI. Okay, so actually Jill has got a couple thousand followers, I think, on the AI side. So
have you been checking it out?
I saw something on LinkedIn where there was an article posted by somebody, and I was just, it was so wrong.
Oh,
It was
so
such
terrible.
a wrong, it was such a wrong article.
I saw also.
And I was like imagining the queries that you'd have to put in. You know, write me a LinkedIn post from an official yet extremely angry standpoint, citing inaccurate facts about the CMMC rollout, which appear to say that criminal activity has taken place throughout.
Yeah.
Like that's that you'd have, like, I was envisioning how you tell the AI to come up with it. It was so bad.
They would really have to try. I mean, I've messed with it a lot, and it usually spits out something better than that article. Really.
See,
so
I'm like, I don't want to touch AI. I don't want to be near AI. And Jill's like, I love AI.
Well, some of it. What was bad is it was AI, but it was horribly edited.
Yeah.
There was
no fact checking at all.
None.
So here's the 5 companies that have achieved CMMC level 5.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have anybody. We don't have anybody that's done CMMC officially. That we can see C3PAOs have done a DoD CMMC level 2 assessment. No level 3, no level 4, definitely no level 5.
Yeah.
All right. But I guess we ought to get to the actual point of the call, right? So scoping a level 2 assessment. Now, this is something that normally takes like 2 to 3 hours to teach a class of CCPs and CCAs. We're going to try and condense it to like 10 minutes. What do you
Wish
think?
It down.
Yep.
Good luck.
Yeah. So if generalities rule the day and we're not capturing every single nuance, bear with us, please. So first off, we've got the CMMC Level 2 Scoping Guide, the official guide, which is available from the DoD CMMC website, which is literally what I type into the Google to find it, DoD CMMC, and it does come up as one of the first options. So, yay, Google. All right. So we've got this table here, which summarizes information. And it's important to recognize that it summarizes the information because some of these statements in the table lack the nuance of the full description later in the document. So for example, security protection assets says assess against applicable CMMC practices, and then gives more examples of, for a SIM, you would assess it based on the thing it does for you in terms of security. But this just says assess against CMMC practices, therefore we go full on. Let's get that asset. But this table is a nice way of summarizing, so I think I'll probably stick here. So for our CMMC Level 2 scope, it is mostly related to CUI, meaning most of our scoping decisions are based on how close that asset is to CUI. So first off, we have the category CUI assets. assets that process, store, transmit CUI. If you have recently watched the FCI scoping video that we put out, you will understand kind of, what processing, storing, and transmitting is. And the difference is for CMMC level 2, we're talking about CUI. We're not talking about FCI, which is a smaller category. All right. So does the asset process, store, transmit CUI? Yes or no? If it's yes, oh goodness, we're going towards that CUI asset category. But here's some nuance. So like the CUI, like CMMC level 1, we've got this specialized asset category, which is a risk decision that the DoD made because these specialized asset types of government property, Internet of Things, operational technology, restricted information systems, and test equipment are very, very hard to do enterprise level security for, and very, very expensive to do that for, if not impossible. The DoD has said, you don't need to do full security for specialized assets, even if they have CUI on them. So what they say is you need to document the specialized assets. You need to show that they are managed using the contractor's risk-based security policies, procedures, and practices. All right, so let me go off on a tangent here. There's two ways of reading this sentence. Show these assets are managed using the contractor's risk-based security policies, procedures, and practices. One way of reading it is that you're showing how you are reducing the risk of CUI getting onto these assets. But wait, specialized assets could have CUI. So that statement doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? For them? Huh. Okay, so maybe it's not that one. Maybe what they intended to say was consider your risk from cybersecurity threats and manage those risks as best as you can using your intelligence.
Brain.
Which would fit this specialized asset category very well, because sometimes you can implement some security, but you can't implement all security. And they want you to use your brain to figure out which one is effective and efficient. So I'm personally in the camp of that second definition, where it's risk-based is to try and reduce cybersecurity risk, as opposed to risk-based meaning not getting CUI on the asset. Because why would they apply this to an asset that can have CUI on it? Okay, anyways, back to scoping. Okay, so if an asset has CUI and it doesn't belong into the specialized asset category, then we're generally going to say it's a CUI asset. Now, if the asset does not have CUI, we'd start looking at this out of scope. But there's a slight difference between level 1 out of scope and level 2 out of scope. Level 1 out of scope says it doesn't process, store, transmit. Level 2 says cannot, which is kind of interesting, right? So when we're going to call something out of scope, in order to justify it, we actually need to talk about how there's no way that that asset could get CUI onto it, typically through the use of administrative boundaries, logical boundaries, or physical boundaries. which is why boundaries are a big topic with assessors at level 2. At level 1, boundaries don't even matter. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so if you have a boundary, one way of thinking about it is, say, a denied by default firewall in between your CUI and these other assets, and there's no real way that the CUI could get onto those other assets, you can call them out of scope. If you don't have a really good boundary, then what we're looking at is contractor risk managed assets. So these are assets that could, because you don't have a good boundary in between them, but they're not intended to process, store, or transmit CUI. Now, fun assessor fact, if you show us a system that has CUI on it, and you say, but I don't intend to have CUI on it, we're probably going to be like, what is going on, right? So during your actual assessment, you should make sure that that thing does not have CUI on it if you're going to say it's a contractor risk managed asset. And going back to this critical sentence, show that these assets are managed using a contractor's risk-based security policies, procedures, and practices. They even put risk managed into the name. Beauty wants us to manage risks. They want us to do logical security on these things. It's not like, woohoo, no security.
Right.
They want us to be intelligent about it. Okay. So, and the special thing about contractor risk managed assets is they do not need to be physically or logically separated. You don't need boundaries. All right. Last category. Security protection assets. Assets that provide security functions or capabilities to the contractor's CMMC assessment scope, irrespective of whether or not they process, store, or transmit CUI. Oh my goodness. So now we've got 3 categories of assets that could have CUI on them. CUI assets, security protection assets, and specialized assets. And we don't know which one wins. Okay, so which one should win? Well, same as with level 1 scoping. If it's between CUI assets, which have a very simple definition, right? They process, store, transmit FCI. If it's between that and specialized assets, I'm going to say that specialized assets probably wins. Because why would we have this definition? Why would we have this category if they wanted anything that processed, stored, or transmitted to be a CUI asset? Why, right? Yep. Doesn't make sense. They could have just left it out. We could go from the top of the list to the bottom of the list in priority, but then we would have a situation, maybe it could work, right? But again, we'd have a situation where if it's a CUI asset, we'd never get down to the specialized asset.
Yep.
Or security protection assets. So that doesn't really work. Maybe alphabetical. I don't know. That's probably the worst.
Roll some dice. Just try to magic 8-ball.
Yeah. Should we just combine the categories? If the asset does both CUI asset and specialized asset, should be both? Well, probably not, because then we'd simply be assessing the heck out of it, right? Instead of verifying risk and not assessing it. So that doesn't work, right? We need to pick a category. So, okay. So let me pull back and let's talk about how do we pick between CUI asset and security protection asset? Well, when Kieri Solutions went through our DIBCAC assessment for CMMC Level 2, I asked the team this. I said, what do I do? Is it a SPA or is it a CUI? And they said, well, more practices apply to CUI assets than security protection assets. So if it stores, processes, or transmits CUI, put it into the CUI category. Well, that's a pretty interesting statement, right? And that goes back to applicable. But that's not the focus of today, so I'm not going to go too far down that slope. But how do we determine whether an asset provides security functions or capabilities? To me, if you write in your system security plan that the way we do this requirement is using this asset, it is now a candidate to be a security protection asset. If the asset does not perform a CMMC required function for you, then it doesn't need to be a security protection asset. Okay, so for example, if in the requirement that says you need to have malware protection, you say the way I do this is using my antivirus server. That antivirus server is now a candidate to be a security protection asset. If you have a different security service that's not required, for example, a DNS filter. DNS filtering was required back in the early days of CMMC, no longer required. Some companies use it. It's awesome. If you don't list your DNS filter as how you're doing any of the requirements, then it's probably not a security protection asset. It might be some other type of asset, but it's not providing security functions or capabilities relating to CMMC. Okay, and if you go down into the actual text of the description, it gets a little bit more detailed, supporting that it needs to be a CMMC required function. Next thing, do you see how this table says assets that are in the CMMC assessment scope up at the top? And it goes through CUI assets, security protection assets, contractor risk managed assets, and specialized assets. Officially, all four of those assets are in the CMMC assessment scope. Even if they are contractor risk managed assets and you don't really assess them, even if they are specialized assets and you don't really assess them. The only thing that's not in the CMMC assessment scope are out of scope assets. Okay, paintbrush time?
Paint.
So here's your network. We're going to have another network and we'll say that's a cloud network. And we'll have a different network and we'll say that's your website. Okay. So hold on. Bear with me.
It's like some sort of like abstract
time.
art. Somebody might pay like thousands of dollars for it. If you
oh my
print it out.
goodness. Bear with my terrible drawing. All right, this will make sense. Okay. So website has no CUI. It has no FCI. Your cloud has CUI. Your firewall performs a security function. specifically control communications through the boundary. You have a specialized asset with CUI. You have a laptop which has nothing. And I'm going to put down nothing on the website. All right, over here, we have a laptop with FCI on it. And over here, we have a laptop with CUI. Okay, so level 2 scoping. The firewall is our main boundary that we're looking at here for this network up here. Okay, so each of these computers can talk to each other. We don't have great boundaries in between them. All right. So this laptop, is it a specialized asset? Probably not, no. Does it have CUI on it?
Yes.
Yes. All right, so I'm going to say it's probably a CUI asset.
I concur.
Is this laptop a specialized asset?
No.
Nope. Is it performing security functions? Probably not. I'm not naming this laptop as the way I'm doing virus scans or protecting boundaries. Does it have CUI on it? No. Is it inside the same boundary with CUI? Yes. So that makes it a CRMA, contractor risk managed asset. This laptop down here, still not a specialized asset, still not a security protection asset. It doesn't have CUI on it, but it is in the same boundary. So I'm going to also call it a CRMA. And let me catch up over here, CUI asset. Okay. All right, and then this one over here, specialized asset. Yep, instantly. Specialized asset. This firewall. Is it a specialized asset? No. Does it store, process, or transmit CUI? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay. So here's a little bit, here, let's divert. Is encrypted CUI still CUI? Yeah. If it is FIPS 140-2 encrypted,
right,
with a validated module, is it still CUI in that ciphertext state? Yeah. That's pretty much what every assessor does.
Yeah.
Because there's no official guidance. The closest guidance we have is the requirements themselves, which say something along the lines of encrypt CUI,
right,
to protect the confidentiality of it in transit.
I would think most assessors would say it is still CUI. However,
For scoping purposes.
For scoping purposes. No.
Okay,
No.
so let's say that it is CUI when it's in ciphertext, right? So this laptop is communicating to the cloud via encrypted. You can tell it's encrypted because it's squiggly.
That's always how I tell.
Yes. So it's got an encrypted session in between the cloud and the laptop. So the firewall is having ciphertext go through it. The firewall cannot decrypt this ciphertext. Let's just assume that's the case. We have not provided the encryption key to the firewall. If we consider that this CUI is now turning this firewall into a CUI asset, well, guess what? There's 7 more hops across the internet before we get to the cloud. How are we going to assess the ISP
Right.
router in the neighborhood? How are we going to assess the regional ISP router? How are we going to assess the broadband one?
I'm
We
gonna go
can't.
to the Verizon headquarters.
Yeah, we just assessed
Show up.
Verizon. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Easy day. I
Right.
love it because now my assessment's going to charge $1 million.
Yep.
I'm good. I'm good for the next 2 years. That'll be my job. We can't, right? Reasonably, there's no way. So if you extend this thought process of ciphertext is still CUI, well, then we have just put the internet into scope, and that's no good. So reasonably, I think that most assessors are going to say, if it's ciphertext, encrypted, properly encrypted with a FIPS 140-2 validated module, then it doesn't count as processing, storing, or transmitting CUI. Okay, hopefully the DoD comes out with a little bit of clarification on this because it makes everyone crazy. But anyways, so this firewall, can we agree it's not as a CUI asset? Okay. Does it provide security to CUI? Yes. Okay, so it's a security protection asset. Good. All right. Now, this cloud over here, is it a specialized asset? I don't think we can call any cloud a specialized asset, generally, unless it's like a government provided cloud service. So safe.dod.mil is a DoD provided secure file share. Maybe that's a example of a specialized asset. But in general, commercial cloud's not going to be specialized assets. So the next question is, does it have CUI? Yep, so it's a CUI asset. All right, now next, this website. Is it a specialized asset? No. Does it have CUI? No. Does it provide security to CUI? No. Is it inside the same boundary as CUI? Nope. Therefore, out of scope. Yay! We don't have to even look at the website. Yay! All right. Now let's. When we're doing a level 2 assessment, our scope is going to look like that. Everything inside of the ugly purple circle, oval thing. Yay, paint. All right. So that will be our assessment. Now, let me break your mind. So the business also has another facility where they work with FCI. Let's say that this is a laptop. Okay. Now, you might be tempted to do a level 2 assessment of this scope. And I am telling you from the bottom of my heart, I have tried this. It's not a good idea. It's a really bad idea. Okay, because what will happen is you're going to go look at this, and even if you're like, oh, I'm just going to check the level 1 practices on it, right? Of course, we'll just make sure they're doing the level 1 practices. It's easy. And you come over and the front door is unlocked 24/7, and they have no sign-in desk. It's propped open. They have no sign-in desk. They've got FCI just scattered everywhere, and people are just walking in and out without control.
Just like turn around and go back to your car and cry. And
yeah. If you fail their level 2 assessment because of this disaster, it's your problem. You have screwed up. Okay, this is why level 1 assessments are self-assessments, so that the company can self-assess that unlocked building and handle it themselves, and it's on them to do it right. For level 2, you don't even want that mess. You do not want to deal with it. It does not end well. Just look at the actual level 2 scope. Keep level 1 and level 2 completely separate. All right.
Here's a question
yeah?
real quick,
Yeah.
just because I'm looking at it. Okay, say you're getting ready to do this level 2 assessment, and you're wanting to figure out, go look at the website to see about the company, and they've plastered everything about all of their contracts with like, this is who you contact for this, and we specifically make this part for this.
Ooh. Okay.
Right.
So
I'm giving you trouble.
All right. That one's really hard.
Yeah.
That's a really hard question, right? So we're going to say that the website actually has FCI all over it. And you're sure it's FCI. It's not publicly releasable stuff. You're sure it's FCI. There's a level 2 requirement that says you need to have a publication review process, and you need to periodically go and check your public locations for either CUI or FCI. And I'm actually going to go look it up. So hold on. So 3.1.22. Now the CMMC Level 2 Assessment Guide, which I'm showing on my screen right now, they have diverged from the 800-171 requirements. They have changed the word CUI to FCI on some of the level 1 stuff, even for the level 2 scope. And that's, again, really troublesome to the assessors, because if I was assessing 800-171, it would say CUI right here, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. And I would just be like, it's not CUI,
right?
Therefore not part of my deal. But because the CMMC Assessment Guide published by the DoD says FCI, I would feel forced to judge them against this requirement. I'd probably email the DoD also. As an assessor, I'd probably double check on this one. Now there's a little bit more to this though. The company identifies their own scope, and they say this is out of scope. And if it was something else, if it was not a public website, that's a different story. Okay, so if they had a laptop that was considered out of scope, because they told us it was out of scope. That is not really the assessor's problem. Okay, it is not our job to dig and dig and dig and dig and try and find where you've lied to us. This is one of the things where assessors really have very little ability to double check up on the client. If they say something's out of scope and actually shouldn't be, we can't tell, right? You take it off the network diagrams, we're not going to know it's not there, because we're coming in from outside. So we're allowed to do a little bit of double checking. We're allowed to ask questions during the scoping call, make sure it all makes sense. But if the company did indeed leave something out entirely, then it's more of a question. No, this is getting into a lengthy conversation.
Right. It's
more of a question of whether the company did that on purpose, and they are trying to, they have a reason behind it, right? For example, the company could be in the middle of a migration. This could be their old corporate network, and they're moving all their data to a secure enclave. And they want the assessors to verify that the secure enclave is awesome before they move into it. That's a very good reason to only assess the secure enclave, with the assumption that they're going to get rid of this old corporate network. And that's a reason why it's vitally important for assessors, when they issue a CMMC certificate, that the scope is described. It's vitally important, right? Our scope should be, we assessed the network that starts from this firewall and everything inside that firewall, and we assessed this cloud. We didn't assess anything else, right? And then if the company uses their CMMC certificate and they say, we use the network listed on the certificate, perfect. If the company uses their CMMC certificate, but they actually use this little network over on the left side, I'm trying to find my mouse here. If they use this thing that wasn't assessed, that is grounds for false claims in my book.
Yep.
That's real bad. But if they get assessed on this network and then they make sure that they use this network for the stuff that they showed their certificate for, awesome. That's the way it should work. Did I miss anything, Jill?
No. So the website we're emailing the DoD about, is that what we decided on that one? If there's like a video of like, yay us, we got this contract, watch how we do this. Let's put a video camera behind somebody as they do their little AutoCAD. You know what? I've seen some.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's here's where you will have a major issue during your assessment, which is grounds for canceling the assessment, or you have failed and you will need to get reassessed, is when you have something that should absolutely be in scope. It's right here, right? It's on the, it's inside the boundary with the rest of the stuff, and you did not mention it. And maybe this is a Linux server, right, with CUI on it. The assessment team, you didn't tell them about this Linux server, right? So they have prepared their entire assessment, including, going through the scoping, reading the SSP, right? You don't mention the Linux server anywhere, really sly. They have priced out the level of effort for the assessment, not including that Linux server. They have a team size, which does not account for that Linux server. They have a number of days, which doesn't account for the Linux server. They don't have a test plan, an interview plan, nothing for that Linux server. if during the middle of the assessment, we find out that that Linux server exists, it is a disaster. It is a complete disaster. Because one, we didn't account for the amount of time it's going to take to review all 110 requirements against this Linux server. So negotiate the price. Two, if this Linux server is not in your inventory list, if it's not on your network diagrams, if you're not describing how you're doing the requirements for this Linux server in your system security plan, almost guaranteed you're not doing security for it. And so as soon as we start looking at it, you know, do you have the screen lock set up? Do you have complex passwords? Do you have secure configurations applied? Do you have a baseline? You're going to fail.
Yeah.
Like you're going to fail all the requirements for that Linux server. And that's one of the problems with the current CMMC assessment process is we don't have a way to work through that. If I was king for the day, what I would do is I would say, you're not going to get your certificate, but let's reschedule another session. Let's, you know, schedule another assessment for that Linux server in a month. And once you show that you're doing security for everything, then we'll give you a CMMC certificate. But unfortunately, right now, today, April 2023, missing one of those 5-point requirements will just stop your entire assessment, which is no good. So this one, having something that is inside the boundary that absolutely needs to be assessed, missing, that's a full stop disaster. Call the C3PAO, have a meeting with the CISO, the C3PAO, and we're starting to talk major money and contracts at that point. Good point, Jill.
I'm just trying to figure out what to do about the website.
So I think the website is going to be, you have failed 3.1. Whatever that is, 3.1.22, you have failed it.
Yep.
And go fix your website.
Yeah. That's my thought. I just and really, like I have, in not as an assessor, but consulting and stuff, I have been like, okay, let me go see what this company's about. And then there's just like all this stuff, and you're like, oh my God. So yeah.
So since I have to do 3.1.22, I think it is.
Yeah.
For Kieri, I have a pro tip. When you need to do the review every quarter or whatever it is for FCI, you can go to the website and you can look at all the pages that have been updated since your last review, and just look at those instead of looking at every single page. So it's a significant change. I will say that publication review thing has hugely slowed down the rate of updates we've made to our website, which is a little bit annoying.
Yeah.
I like free posting when we do stuff, and now I have to ask for permission every single time and show an email back and forth. The assessment guide, where the DoD strategically changed the acronym CUI to FCI, even for the level 2 assessment guide. I'm very curious how that works out long term, because that is a difference from 800-171, and that is a difference from DFARS 7012, and that is a cost increase to the defense contractors that the DoD said that they removed in CMMC version 2.
Right.
Can you think of anything else, Jill?
Nope, I'm happy now.
All right. Good to publish.